thank you for inviting me here. Thank you for you believing in me, because as I saw the program, I believe I'm the last one from this section. This is the last lecture. And as we know from behavioral economics, there is a piquant rule, and this effect goes that you remember events according to last moments of the event, that you do not remember what was happening during the day, but you will remember the last thing you have seen. So I believe you will like the conference in the end, and I will not ruin your work in the end. I guess you must be pretty tired after all day. So now there will be really soft science, really just some talking, psychology. There will be monkeys inside. It will be nice. So I'm Vojtěch Zíka. I am a director of Center for Behavior Experiments here in Prague, where we do research on decision making. I'm also doing my PhD on Faculty of Science in evolutionary psychology, which is closely connected to the decision making. So that's why you will see some evolutionary stuffs inside. So don't get scared. Okay, so before I will start, I don't know how many of you here are familiar with behavior economics, actually, but this field goes back to 50s, 60s, but the most important works at the beginning were done in 70s by Kahneman and Tversky and their program of heuristics and biases. Heuristic principles are some kind of rule of thumb we all use in everyday decision making, because we cannot have a unique solution for each problem in our life, because it would be really costly in terms of energy and a large of our brain. We would need to have really huge head to have this computation power to really solve everything. These rules are quite good, actually, because you can solve really many problems like that. You will not get the perfect solution, but you will get good enough solution, which is good. But sometimes, if you use these rules, you can end up in some systematic error, and these errors are called biases. This is one word which is not translated, which you cannot translate into Czech, basically. To tell you, for example, one rule of thumb which we can have is like, when you see sweet, eat it. I think this is the rule we have all problem with, and I guess that's why we can go at 10 o'clock in the evening to the refrigerator and eat everything inside. But if you think about it, if you were a monkey like 2 million years ago, and you met some tree with fruits or whatever sweet, you didn't know if you will see something sweet in next week. So it make perfect sense to eat as much as possible, because as you can maybe remember from biology on high school or something like this, you need sugar for your brain and for functioning of your body. So that's very important rule. However, it's a little bit problematic today when you can buy sweet at every corner, so you can be a little bit over-sweetened. We are on University of Economics, and I have been studying here. That's funny enough, my first lecture was in this hall, and when I was listening all those stuffs about rational agents and so on, I was thinking like, oh my God, what I'm doing here. And I will explain you why. Like, economical rationality basically goes that you need to do the best decision basically possible at every time of your life. This is good for models, but this doesn't describe reality, right? If you were whatever animal in the nature, you don't need to do perfect decision every time. You need to do decision which will allow you to survive long enough to reproduce and to pass your genes into next generation. This is something which is called evolutionary rationality, which says that you are not maximizing like every decision you are making, but you are maximizing basically your lifetime. And even if you make some irrational decisions from point of view of economics, it might be perfectly rational for your offspring and so on. To go a little bit more deep inside, and we will shift to overconfidence and bankruptcy in a while. You will see, just give me a few more minutes, then it will connect everything together. Just to illustrate for you how strong this concept might be, I have prepared for you some kind of short lineage of our genus. And this lovely monkey there, this is brown capuchin, which is our ancestor, from which we split it like 30 million years ago. And then we have another ancestor, which is chimpanzee, whom we share 99% of our DNA. And we split it from chimpanzee like 6 million years ago. And modern human exists roughly 0.2 million years, or 200,000 years. And why I'm showing you this? The brain which we have has evolved from that capuchin monkey over there. And there are some cognitive mechanisms, some decision making, which we actually do share with these animals there. How we know this? Because there is something called comparative research, and you are doing some experiment with monkeys, and you are testing them if they exhibit the same biases and same decision-making errors as humans. And it had been shown in several experiments that yes, we do share with capuchin monkey, for example, framing effects, peak end effect, which I told you about now, endowment effect, or preference for immediacy, or there is a picture from experiment just for you to be able to imagine. There is the capuchin monkey, and then you are giving him two sweets. One is blue, one is green, and at first he's taking blue because I don't know why he likes it more. In the second picture, you can see he's taking it actually. And at the third picture, you can see that the experimenter replaced the blue sweets with red sweets. And in human, we know that if people once decide not to make some choice, they are sticking with this choice for a long time. So you wouldn't choose, if you once rejected the green one, you will not take it for the second time. And the monkey did exactly the same. And if you are able to prove this repeatedly, you can be sure that there is some underlying mechanism in cognition of monkey, which is common in human and in capuchin. As you can see, there is this list of some cognitive biases that I have put there. You cannot see the overconfidence. You cannot see the over-optimism in there, which is the title of this speech. And the reason is that it's quite difficult to test it with monkeys. And no one did it so far, at least to my knowledge. And why is overconfidence that much pronounced and an important bias? Why we are talking about it now on the sessions on insolvency and bankruptcy? Some psychologists, as for example Scott Plus, they think that overconfidence is one of the most severe problem in decision making, because it's forcing us to do really poor decisions in our life, time to time. He's saying, for example, that I don't know, the Challenger catastrophe or Chernobyl explosion, that it had been partly caused by overconfidence of some managers or of some workers. Overconfidence, you can basically split overconfidence into three different concepts. First is overestimation. This is when you are overestimating your actual ability or performance, level of control, chance of success. This is very common. You just think that you will make it because you want to do it. You think that all people around you will work the same hard as you do, and so on. That you neglect the role of luck or role of chance, basically. Overplacement, you will be familiar with this, maybe you don't know the name, but this is really kind of famous psychological findings that, for example, 90% of drivers thinks that they are better than average driver. I think for university teachers, it's like 95%, it's even more. So, and of course, if you understand statistics a little bit, it's almost impossible, or ultimately impossible to be like 90% people over the average, right? The third is over-precision, and this is some kind of excessive certainty regarding the accuracy of one beliefs. So you think that if you know something, you are sure that you know it. Yeah, if I would ask you what's the distance between New York and Prague, and you would think like, I don't know, 7,000 kilometers, and maybe you would be sure that it's like that, and you would be able to argue with me that it's like really that, and I believe most of us somehow did it, and then you find out that you were completely wrong, but you thought that. So, as I told you, if there is some evolutionary rationality, if nature is equipping us with some tools we actually need to survive, why we have something like overconfidence, which would destroy our decision-making in some cases completely? One theory, which might be true, and now it's kind of mainstream theory in overconfidence theory, is that overconfidence is kind of signaling. It goes as follows, the logic that if there were two monkeys who met each other 2 million years ago, and there were a box of bananas between them, and the one monkey was apparently smaller and weaker, and if you would think about this situation, then the weaker monkeys would always lose the food. They would never eat because there would be always stronger monkeys who would like overcompete them, who would overrun them, who would maybe kill them. If you would think about the consequences, there would be no like really weak monkeys, there would be only strong in the end after some generations, because the weak monkeys would be just ruled out from the space. And so maybe the nature equipped us with this overconfidence mechanism to make us, to let us bluff. Like that if we know that we are weaker, we can show that we believe that we are actually stronger. And in some cases, like the stronger counterpart can just fly away from the conflict, and he will let you the box of banana for yourself, even if you are weaker, actually. There might be, and now we are getting to the insolvency and bankruptcy problem, there might be problems with market dynamics. These are two of my maybe most favorite quotations. Like President Truman was once saying, "Give me a one-handed economist, because all my economists say on one hand, on the other." And this is exactly that. Like if you are advisor of US president, you cannot tell him like, it might be this, or it might be that, I don't know. It seems that it will be this or that. Like authorities want something correct, that they just want to hear one number, and they don't want to hear anything else. Daniel Kahneman was saying that if a CFO who informs his colleagues that there is a good chance that the S&P returns will be between minus 10% and plus 30%, can be expected to be laughed out of the room. And I think this is actually correct in managers especially. They cannot inform CFO that there is spread of 40%. Yeah. The dynamics goes like that it might appear that there is some kind of sorting effect in the end, that those who actually show the overconfidence are more praised and valued at the labor market because the managers like them more, because they are telling them what they want to hear, basically. And the less confident, or not, let's say, realistic managers will be just not on the labor market, or they will be paid less because no one will want to work with them, because they will just be saying, you know, the economy is not that good and we might lose, don't do that. This is what managers doesn't want to hear sometimes. There are also other factors, like misattribution of the cause, which is that you actually believe that your behavior will produce success. And if there is some good outcome in your work, you think, yeah, like I did it. It's my ability, it's my skill. Yeah? But when there is something bad that happened, you will just say, oh, you know, bad luck, like economy is not that good recently, so it's not my fault. There is also negative shielding, which is happening when companies are actually giving some bonuses to the managers for some events they actually couldn't affect, like world oil prices. But when again, their performance is not that good and the price goes down, they are not giving them, you know, some penalties or whatever, because they are just saying, you know, it's not your fault. But they think it's like their fault if it's going well. There are some numbers. These are like from various researches to see what can really happen, and it's not just academic debate, actually. So, for example, overconfident CEOs are about 1.7 times as likely to conduct a merger as their rational counterpart. And there are also the others. For example, good one is that clinicians who were completely certain of the diagnosis ante mortem were wrong 40% of the time. So when you will go next to see your doctor, maybe think, okay, there might be some overconfidence issues with this guy, and don't believe them that much. There is also some recent experimental evidence. There are some concepts I haven't been talking about so far as underconfidence. It's the opposite of overconfidence, that there might be some underconfident people because they think that in comparison with these overconfident, they are not that good. And they are actually like think that they are performing much worse. So the experimental evidence is that strong overconfidence results in excess investment, which is especially true for men, it appears, not that much for women, but still. Underconfidence induces underinvestment. It's the complete opposite. If you don't believe in yourself, you will not make risky choices, actually. And moderate overconfidence leads to accurate investment. So we need some level of overconfidence, but not that much. So there is a question, is the overconfidence all bad? Like, is it completely bad phenomena? It's just some evolutionary like mistake which is only allowing us to survive, but it's really complicating our life, like everyday life. It seems that it's not all bad, because there might be some positive effects. Like if you have overconfident manager, he can like motivate his employees to work harder. And actually, if he do some damage, or she, the manager, if do some damage, the other employees can actually like compensate this damage and actually make it even better. Overconfidence also reduces the underinvestment resulting from CEOs' risk aversion. So the CEOs might be risk averse to some extent, and if they would be risk averse, they will not invest. But if they are risk averse and overconfident, it might like overcome again the risk averseness. And interesting, but you might expect that overconfident CEOs invest more in R&D because actually they believe, again, that they can control their environment. They believe that they will come with something great which will help them. As my colleague in previous panel was saying, that those shareholders believe that everything will be just fine in 6 weeks. You cannot say this because you don't know what will happen tomorrow, but people actually think that that everything will be good tomorrow. I will tell you why in a while. So, what can be the remedy? This is some kind of solution. It's called premortem. It's kind of framework. And if there is some organization which is trying to arrive to some decision, so if they have the proposal, and the proposal is just before like confirming the proposal or make it active, there might be some gathering of people, of managers from other departments, board, whatever, and they will play such a mind game, and it will go as follows: that imagine that we are a year into the future, we implemented the plan as it now exists. The outcome was a disaster. Please take 5 to 10 minutes to write a brief history of the disaster. And doing this, you might easily like overcome all the overconfident choices you have made or you would make, because if you are writing it down and you are thinking about it from the different side, you have different perspective, and it can actually help you a lot. But there is one problem, which is another bias, unfortunately. So this bias, it's optimism bias, and even if you would arrive to some conclusion, even if you would get some input from the outside that there is something wrong, you will not want to hear it. Actually, if you think something, you don't want to hear anything which like deny what you think. And it's because of optimism bias. I put this quote: optimism bias is the opium of the mankind, which is from the novel of Milan Kundera, The Joke. And it's true, actually. Why we are optimistic? We are not talking actually about the optimism if you can see the glass half empty or half full, but genetically the optimism is a personal trait which 75% of people have in some sort. Yeah? And it seems that it's part of our mental health. And if you think about it, if you would be just lying in your bed in the evening and you would be thinking like, oh my God, what's the probability that I will finish my university, that I will find normal girl or normal boy to marry, and what's the probability that I will have healthy kids and I will have money and I will have satisfied life, everything, blah, 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 then probably you would kill yourself, right? If you were realistic, because the probability is actually very small. So evolution equipped us with something which is called optimism to not see the bad event that much bad as they actually might be. But you know, the overconfidence, it's something not biological. It's kind of process which can be overcome somehow. But unfortunately, the optimism, you have kind of special areas in your brain. I don't know if this is working. It seems, yeah. Yeah. So these parts in your frontal lobe are called inferior frontal gyrus, and they are actually responsible for updating your beliefs. Unfortunately, one is working worse than the other. And this is from research from Tali Sharot, 2013, I believe. And the experiment went like that. They gave to people some questionnaires, and at one point they tell them, now tell us what you think, what's the probability of you dying of cancer? And the people, for example, wrote, like, I don't know, 20%. I made up this number, don't worry. You will not believe it anyway. So they continued in filling it, some questionnaire, and I don't know, 1 hour later, they gave them like information, okay, so the probability is actually 40%. And in some time, they asked them again, what's the probability you dying of cancer? And you would think that if you got the correct information, the people would like update their beliefs and said, okay, it's 40, they told me like half an hour ago. But it appeared that they haven't updated their beliefs. They said like 25. They updated it, but just a little bit, like just a little bit more. And they did the same, but in the opposite direction. So they asked people, what's the probability of you dying of cancer? And they said, for example, it's 20. In some time, they told them, okay, the actual probability is 10%. And after some minutes, they asked them again, so what's your probability of you dying of cancer? And guess what? They were like, okay, like you told us that it's 10%, so it's 10%, right? Like they completely updated everything they have learned. What might be the explanation is, again, the overconfidence and the over-precision. That basically you do not believe these numbers because you are thinking, okay, but this is some average. This doesn't apply to me. Like my neighbor will die with probability of 10 or 40% or anyway, if you don't like it. But if you like it, then it applies to you. In many researches on mental health, it had been shown that you can live longer with cancer, AIDS, you have stronger immune system, etc., many good things if you are optimist. Normally, people who are not optimists have some mental disease, at least soft. So, you know, like people are saying, you know, I'm pessimistic, I'm optimistic. It has really nothing to do with that. If you do not have diagnosed mental disease, you are probably optimist. And as I was telling you about this updating, it's because the one area in your brain is just working more than the other. The area which is updating the positive information is working more.
Pardon, 5 minut ještě.
Super. Of course, you can think of optimism in managers too, but you can maybe better imagine it with business owner. Now imagine that you would decide to run a restaurant in your neighborhood. I believe that you can obtain really good data about how many restaurants of the same type were there in a history, how many of them were successful, how long they were running, and so on and so on. But people generally doesn't do this. This is called base rate neglect. It's another kind of bias, but people are neglecting the statistical data that they can obtain. And even if they would obtain them, they wouldn't believe them because of the optimism. So it's a little bit like magic circle. This is, again, from some other research, and they were asking small-size businesses in US to estimate the chances of success for any business like yours. And they estimated average 60%, but the true was like almost 2 times less, like 35. 4/5 of respondents believe that their chances are more than 70%. This is, again, they believe that they are better than average, actually. And 1/3, 33%, eliminated the chance that they will bankrupt. And only 40% of restaurants are still open after 3 years of working. I have one example that I particularly like. If you don't know that because you are not from Czech Republic, the divorce rate in Czech Republic is 50%, which means that every second marriage is broken. And if you wouldn't be optimistic and you would know the statistics, you would never get married because, you know, like just every second of us here will have broken marriage if we would be from the same population. So why you would ever want to get married if you know that there is quite fair chance that you will get divorced? Of course, you will say before, like, okay, my marriage, it doesn't apply to my marriage, this statistic, because we love each other, right? What can be done with the optimism? You can consult with people who doesn't have any stakes with the problem, because actually then there is, they have no beliefs about anything. If they have no beliefs, they can think clearer. Just think, maybe you had some project in your mind some years ago, or you were running some business or something, and then you were talking with your relatives, boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, and they were saying, hey, it's complete rubbish, it could never work, like, look, here you have some numbers or whatever, and you just didn't want to hear it. Yeah? You were just angry with that person that they are trying to ruin everything you were creating, because, of course, you have some relationship to your ideas, and so on and so on. So listen actually to the people who you don't, for example, like, or who doesn't wish you to be successful, because there can be some truth in what they are saying. The other thing, it's some kind of joke, but maybe in 40 years, who knows? In that research I was showing you with the inferior gyrus, how they find out this. I haven't told you. There is some device with shortened as TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation. It's kind of device. It's not big, and if they put this device close to your skull, they are kind of shutting down part of your brain. And when they shut down the inferior gyrus, which was updating the negative information, the people who were before not updating them enough started to decide rationally. The bias disappeared. So maybe there will be CFOs or CEOs in the future who will be working in this kind of helmet with this TMS inside, and they will be like the most rational decision makers in the world. So thank you for your attention.